Hello guys, this is Alex again here from the Growing Younger team and Body Fit Physiotherapy. Now, if you recall 2 weeks ago, we talked about stretching and we talked about the difference between static, dynamic and PNF type stretches. Now, I promised to you that I will come back and talk to you about the importance of stretching and you've probably heard about many people talking about how stretching apparently helps to prevent injuries. So I decided to test this theory and I went and did some extra research on the topic. So I want to show you what the actual up-to-date research says on the subject of stretching and how important it is for preventing injuries. If you're exercising, if you're playing sport, how important is stretching to stop you getting hurt? Okay, so I identified a few studies that I thought were very important and that sort of really communicate important messages on the subject. So let's start from the first study that I found. So this is actually an old study. It was done in 1983, but nevertheless, it's they found some quite interesting results. They actually tested 180 soccer players. And basically they divided the players into two groups. The control group didn't receive any stretches, and another group received vigorous stretching program. And what they actually found is that those soccer players who stretched regularly had almost something like 4 times less injuries per month. So what the authors found is that those who stretched only had 0.6 injuries per month on average, and those who did not stretch had 2.6 injuries per month. So you can see the difference is quite significant. Okay, so stretching, if you are a football player, if you play soccer, I think you can probably relate to anyone who plays at any quality of football. So rugby, touch, rugby league. I think these results could actually apply to you as well. So the second study that I've brought to you today is they actually tested 30 football teams. So it's a big study. What they actually found is that those players who used static and PNF stretches. Now, if you're not quite sure what static and PNF stretches are, just go back to the video I shared with you 2 weeks ago. I thoroughly explained what that actually means. So what that study found is that those football players who did static and PNF stretches, they actually had a significantly reduced risk of hamstring injuries. So hamstring injuries are quite common with soccer, running, when playing rugby. So if you stretch, you definitely run a lesser risk of getting hamstring injuries. So quite an interesting results. Now another study was done in actually 2010, so relatively recently, and they involved 36 football players, and instead of getting their players to stretch, what they actually they measured the athlete's flexibility, and they tried to make a connection between how flexible the players are and their risk of injury. So what they actually found is that those players who received some kind of sports injury had less flexibility, less joint flexibility, okay, so, and vice versa. So those players with higher degree of joint flexibility had a less risk of receiving an injury. So if you're involved in a team sport such as soccer, any kind of football, I think it is very important to stretch to prevent injuries. And if you go back to the video 2 weeks ago, I actually explained which stretches are the best depending on your situation. Now, I want to also quickly talk to you about what if you don't play football, soccer or rugby? What if you're just a runner or you do some other kind of sport, okay? What does actually research say on that? Now, there's actually a couple of studies that I've found, and interestingly enough, they actually found no effect of stretches on your risk of injury. So, interesting results and not convincing. Definitely, stretching is definitely good for you if you play football, but if you don't play football, well, it doesn't seem like there's actually that much evidence to say that it definitely stops you from receiving injuries. Now, saying that, I think it is still important to stretch as part of your warm-up. Now, as I said in my previous video, when you're warming up, it's important that you do dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching means you're not holding the stretch, you're actually moving while stretching. So if you're stretching your hamstrings, you're swinging your leg back and forward, okay? So that kind of stretching, actually, it's a really good warm-up, and I believe it does help you prevent injuries. I see it all the time, especially in the winter, in the winter period, when it's colder. Sometimes players turn up and they're still cold, their body is stiff, they jump and start playing a sport or maybe even running, and they hurt themselves straight away because their body it hasn't adjusted yet, it's still cold, still stiff. So I think dynamic stretching as part of your warm-up is still very important, no matter what sport you play, okay? So these are the results. Hopefully you can go and apply this to yourself, and I'll talk to you on the next video. Bye for now.